everyone. This is Andre Roy, former Ottawa Senators, also Stanley Cup champ with the Tampa Bay Lightning. I just want to say congratulations to the boys in the booth on your 200th episode.
Hello, boys in the booth. Congratulations on 200 episodes. Hopefully you get 200 listeners for one of these episodes. Doubt it. You're all ugly. I love you very much. Thank you very much for having me on. And let's do it again sometime. From Hammy.
Hey guys, Gavin White here. I just wanted to wish you guys congratulations on 200 episodes. It's a huge goal. I love listening to the pod. Try and keep up with as much as possible. Best of luck in the future. Take care.
Hey, it's Rebecca Sharp, the coach of the Ottawa Sledgehawks, and congratulations on your 200th episode.
Hey, congrats on 200 episodes, boys. Case, Harps, Melbs. You guys are truly incredible at what you guys do. It's really fun and exciting listening to you guys, and it was really humbling to be a part of your first 200 episodes. It was cool, entertaining, and I'm looking forward to listening to 200 more. Congrats, boys.
You're now listening to the Boys in the Booth podcast with your hosts, Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams.
That's a big one.
Yeah!
Good evening and welcome to episode 200 of the Boys in the Booth podcast. Cody, Abrams, and Melbourne with you for this one. Fellas, that's a nice number, 200. Those were some great and hilarious messages that we got from some of our good friends of the podcast. Thank you, everyone, for your support. 200 episodes, boys. Here we are. Another nice little milestone for us. How we doing?
Well, I think there's enough recordings of us on the internet now that they can probably recreate our personalities and put them into an AI system and make sure that our loved ones feel good when we're gone. Let's hope that doesn't happen, but feeling good, feeling a little tired after a long weekend because there's a couple nights in a row of just late NHL play from the boys, and that kept me from getting real sleep on a long weekend.
Yeah. No real sleep on that weekend, but it was a good one for sure. And I got to recover on Monday on Family Day. Paige and I went to the spa, so that was good. A few ice baths, a few saunas, in and out, relaxing, chilling. So that was great. Case, it's funny you mentioned the AI thing. I've always thought about that. Like since this new AI, video has become a thing, and like there have been major improvements within the last year. I think about that all the time. Like someone just, having an AI scrub our site or scrub our YouTube channel and just, be able to recreate our likenesses so easily. I think it's terrifying, but it's also pretty cool at the same time. And I used to think about that before we did video, and now we do video, so it's even crazier. But another thing I was thinking about too, Harp, is you always start by saying good evening. And I've always wondered, like Corey, for example, I know listens every Wednesday morning in the work truck. I wonder what he feels like when you're saying good evening. I wonder if maybe we should mix in a good morning, a good afternoon, maybe one of those, just to make sure that everybody is engaged. But just a couple thoughts right off the top.
Yeah, that's a great point. Never even thought of that. Or just welcome. That's how we need to start them too.
Well, just, not that I'm giving notes or anything. I just thought that was interesting. Crossed my mind. Couple thoughts to start the pod. And a third one is, 200 episodes, good for us. Like, who would have thought, sitting here 5 years after we started, that we would consistently be doing this on a weekly basis. So wouldn't want to be doing it with anyone else, guys, and excited to get into this one.
Yeah, well said, man. Couldn't agree more. It's been a ride so far, and looking forward to the next 100 episodes that we do here. So, good on us, boys. 200 episodes, and here we are. And I just want to say, too, what a great weekend of hockey it was. Not only in Brockville, we had the Winter Classic, of course, with members of the Ottawa Senators alumni, and you heard from one of them at the top of the show, Andre Waugh, who was a great interview a couple of weeks back. And if you haven't listened to that one, definitely go and listen to that. Great weekend here, but also in the NHL, you had Jaromir Jagr and his return to Pittsburgh and being honored, and the warm-up and just the speech and the guys wearing the mullets and everything. Nice moment with Chris Letang and him. The list goes on. You had all kinds of debuts in the NHL as well. Mason Morelli, 28-year-old undrafted guy making his debut with Vegas, and the list goes on there. And then also the outdoor games, and a nice win for your Devils there, Case. And it was just a great weekend of hockey all in all, and it's the game that we love, and we get to cover it with this show and in other ways as well, and it's just great. So yeah, it was a great weekend all in all, and starting off the week on a nice note.
Hart, before we get into the episode, I wanted to ask you, do you have any memorable moments from the weekend at the Brockville Winter Classic? I know there were some good names there, Terry Ryan being one of them, and I had to ask because I didn't know he played for the Ottawa Senators. Why exactly was he there? And what was your favorite part of the weekend? Was there a good story you heard? I want to hear about it.
Yeah, I mean, again, the whole weekend was great. It always is, and Terry Ryan was just there as a throw-in special guest, and so when it came to the alumni game on the Sunday, he played on the Tim Hortons All-Stars team that plays against whatever alumni team it is that year, whether it's the Leafs, the Blackhawks, in this case the Senators this year, and I was there calling the game, of course. So that's why he was there. Todd Gill was there once again. Al Iafrate was back.
I don't think Al Iafrate is on every team that's been there, but he's there every year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm convinced the guy lives in Brockville now. It's pretty funny, but yeah, those guys were just kind of there to be a part of it, even though they're not Sens alumni. And then in terms of the favorite moments and stuff for me, I think it was reconnecting with a guy like Rob Murphy, who still works in hockey. I believe he's a scout currently with the Ottawa Senators, and of course is a Sens alumni. He was drafted in the second round by the Vancouver Canucks in 1987. He grew up in Quebec, and I totally forgot about this, but that when my uncle James was working for the Senators in corporate sales years ago, and when he was living in Stittsville, Rob Murphy and his family were next door neighbors to my uncle James and his family in Stittsville. So it was just really cool to reconnect with him again and, kind of talk about James and reminisce a little bit, talk about the old days. And yeah, it was great. And actually, I played on a team in that outdoor tournament at Rotary Park on Saturday. I played on the same team as Rob Murphy and Brian McGrattan, which was really cool. And so being with a guy like that who is absolutely massive to sit with in a trailer, by the way, and to sit beside him on the bench, it's crazy how big that dude is, and play with some other great guys as well. So yeah, just those things in particular, but great weekend all in all, and yeah, just an awesome weekend for hockey.
Rob Murphy is how I got that Devils jersey, by the way, from the team's inventory. Basically, he was friends with a scout in Jersey, and he picked up the jersey, got it to Rob, and then Rob got it to me. So that's a little connection as well. He's related to Rebecca.
Oh, that's awesome! Oh, no way.
And talking to Luke Vanderbeer, and he said that he's got a new, I guess accolade that he can take away from that weekend, as he got a bloody lip from Chris Neal.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I tell you, that outdoor tournament is, it's obviously just for fun at the end of the day, but certainly got intense at times. And I will tell you that we played 2 games. The first game that we played was really ugly. We lost 11-0. And on the other side, it was all Jesse Winchester and Alexander Daigle as a combo, just throwing it around together, and they carved it up.
Luke said
good.
Alex Daigle was like so easy to play with because he's just like always open and like really intelligent on the ice. And he said he'd just throw the puck near him and he'd pick it up somehow and make a big play. And he said when he had a chance to score, it was 100-mile-an-hour shot. Like he's not letting up at all.
Yeah.
So I saw that Daigle was there, and I clearly just forgot for a sec, because when you said that name, I was like, oh my God, I haven't heard that name in ages.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck?
Yeah.
That's crazy, though, that he was there.
Oh, I know.
Obviously, maybe some would consider him, the majority of the hockey world maybe considers him the biggest bust of all time, first overall. But man, I'm sure he was an incredible player to play with. That's such a cool experience that you got to do that. Sounds like a great weekend.
Oh, for sure. It was awesome. And again, like, Andre Waugh was great. Like, I mean, you should have heard just him going on about some of the stories and him, like, basically faking, like, slipping on the ice, like falling down while fighting Derek Boogaard, just because like he was scared of getting absolutely knocked out cold by him. So it just, that and so many other great stories. Terry Ryan was awesome, obviously. And it was such a great weekend.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, boys. Well, let's get rolling here. Episode 200, of course. And listen, next year it's going to be different, but all in all, glad to have best on best hockey on the horizon once again. It's been a long time, and we're finally going to get to see, Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby playing together, wearing Canada jerseys. We're going to talk about Canada and Finland next week, but this week we're going to talk about the other 2 teams in the Four Nations face-off, they're calling it, in 2025. We're going to start with the U.S. and Sweden, and kind of just, give our rosters that we've either looked at through doing some online digging, ones that we've made ourselves, maybe taking a variety of different mock rosters that we've seen online, and just kind of have an open discussion about them. So we'll start with the U.S., of course, our neighbors, and let's talk about the U.S. Case, why don't we start with you, man? Just kind of ripping through the projected roster that you've got in front of you for the Americans.
Yeah, and I actually put them into lines and pairings as well. I don't know if you guys did that or not. First off, I'll start with the goalies. This was the easiest part of this whole process. There's 3 absolute no-brainers on this team, and that's Connor Hellebuyck, Thatcher Demko, and Jake Ottinger, because those are the 3 best goalies coming out of America. Simple as that.
America.
On defense, I have Quinn Hughes playing with McAvoy. I think that'd be a great matchup to put out together, kind of that, Quinn Hughes gung-ho offense, taking 300 shots at this point this year, and McAvoy, who's just so steady back there and a two-way guy. And then I have Slavin and Fox playing together, kind of a similar matchup there. And Werenski and Brock Faber on the bottom pair. My extras are Luke Hughes and Trouba for defense. Forwards, I had Connor, Matthews, and JT Miller as the top line. Brady Tkachuk, Jack Hughes, and Matthew Tkachuk as a second line. They train together and all summer long, so I'm sure that they've got some sort of chemistry going there, and put 2 big goons out with maybe your smallest forward. Robertson, Larkin, and DeBrincat forming a third line. And Jake Gensel, Jack Eichel, and Matthew Boldy on the fourth line as a bit of kind of a two-way line, if you will. And my extras are Keller and Besser.
Very interesting. So you mentioned 2 extras at both position, and this tournament is only going to allow a 23-man roster, and that includes 3 goalies. So you're only going to have 1 at each position. So I'm going to need you to narrow it down.
Well, I'm cutting Trouba.
Gone.
He was my last pick. And I'll cut Brock Besser.
Fair. It gets so difficult with this team, man.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I wanted to preface before I read my team as well. Like with this USA team, I feel like there are maybe 18 to 20 forwards who could potentially make this team and be in the top 12, just depending on, you know, how you want the lines constructed. And, you know, whether you want to lean defense in the bottom six, or you want an additional line of scoring, or how exactly you want to do it. So, but I'll do it in the same way you did, Case. I'll go goalie, D, and then forward. So my goalies, I've got the same three: Hellebuck, Demko, and Ottinger. I did have an honorable mention for Jeremy Swayman, because I think he's going to get a lot of traction when it comes to being a goalie on this team. He's had a better year, I think, than Ottinger this year, and has a pretty good track record, though not a number one starter, I guess. He's in a tandem situation, but pretty damn good goalie, man. So he has to be in the conversation too. On D, exact same top four, just in different pairs. I've got Hughes playing with Fox, Slavin with McAvoy, and then my bottom pairs different. I have Werenski playing with Seth Jones, so the most overpaid D pairing on the planet. But I think you're going to need something different on the bottom pair, and both of those guys can kind of do it all. And, you know, their contracts overshadow them, but they're still really good players. And then I do have Brock Faber as the seventh there. Honorable mentions, though, like Luke Hughes is up there, Jacob Trouba, John Carlson, Fowler, Hannafin, Sanderson. Like, all these guys are really good players, but man, US might low-key be the favorite going into this.
I think that the US, their 10th defenseman is making Team Sweden.
Yeah, which is wild. And okay, going to forwards, I have Jack Hughes playing the left with Matthews and Clayton Keller. Tried to get a connection there. Matthews and Keller trained together, similar to what you did with your lineup, Case. And then I've got second line, the Kachuk brothers on the outside of JT Miller playing down the middle. I've got Jason Robertson, Jack Eichel, and Joe Pavelski as a third line to bring some depth scoring. And then I've got Kyle Connor, Dylan Larkin, and Tage Thompson on the fourth line with Jake Gensel as an extra. Man, I had a really difficult time forming my bottom six here because there are so many good players left out. Patrick Kane, Brock Besser, Chris Kreider, Vinny Trocheck. Like, Kreider and Trocheck are players that I considered because even though they don't bring the points, they bring a different element. So I had a really hard time, but that's what I settled on.
I know I'm going to get dumped on for not mentioning Patrick Kane, but this is 2025.
Yes. Exactly.
We got a whole nother year to go here, and I just don't know what the status of Patrick Kane is going to be at that point. You know, he's had injuries this year. He is getting up there in age, so I just had to think about that. And I was also kind of thinking, when I'm looking at these teams, is this is a four-team tournament. They're going to care and they're going to want to win, but you have to expect that the organizations are thinking like, next year is the Olympics. Maybe we should be getting some of the younger guys some experience here and some play at the international level with the big team. And that's one of the reasons why I added Matthew Boldy, other than he's such a great two-way player. He plays really good defense and limits the chances of the other team, as well as he can score. So I thought that was a good reason. And then Faber just has a ton of upside and plays a little bit more in the defensive end than Luke Hughes. That's why Faber got the last spot. Just to kind of touch on some of my points before we go to Hart.
Yeah, and boys, like I can't help but think about like this tournament, you know, like in 2030, let's say, you know, just as an example. I mean, you've got guys like Lane Hudson who could enter the mix, and Will Smith, Cutter Gauthier. I mean, Logan Cooley, like the list goes on. Absolutely ridiculous. Just the freight train of talent that's coming for the US and the talent that's already there at the pro level. That's just going through my mind as we're talking about this. But I've got like a very similar roster to yours, to the both of yours, but the lines shake up a little differently. Guys that, you know, can move over to the wing, and, you know, or guys that are normally wingers, but can play center, that sort of thing. So in net, obviously, Hellebuck, Demko, and Jake Ottinger. I mean, they're the three goaltenders. Then on the back end, Hughes and Charlie McAvoy, Slavin and Fox, and then thinking Luke Hughes and Brock Faber, Jake Sanderson would be my extra. There's a lot of recency bias in here for sure. I mean, you look at a guy like Rowensky. I think he's very intriguing. He's obviously got a large cap hit like Seth Jones, but they haven't been up to snuff exactly with those big deals. So even though they are playing on bad teams, to be fair, and then looking at the forward group, I went with Keller on the left side with Matthews and Jack Eichel playing on the wing, right-hand shot playing on the right side. So I've got those three together. Matthews and Eichel obviously know each other. And there's that obvious connection between Keller and Matthews. They're pretty good buddies off the ice. Then the Tkachuk brothers in between Jack Hughes. I mean, that is just absolutely frightening for the other three teams in the Four Nations face-off. Then I've got JT Miller playing center in between Jason Robertson and Brock Besser. So a little bit of a connection there. You know, you've got Miller and Besser, who are obviously big parts of that Lotto line in Vancouver. And they're very familiar with each other. And then Kyle Connor with Dylan Larkin in the middle and Jake Gensel, Tage Thompson, obviously had to have him in here as either, your fourth line, quote unquote fourth line, right winger or as your extra forward. And thinking about other guys too, like if there are injuries, guys who, it can't come over for some reason, I think like maybe a guy like Alex Tuck would get a look as maybe an extra forward. I mean, there are certainly guys in front of him. That was my cat. Sorry about that. But yeah, that's the U.S. roster for me in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I mean, when I was putting together the lines, I wasn't necessarily thinking like, oh, this guy's better than this guy. And it was more like who plays well together, who makes sense together. Yeah. And then these are 4 first lines.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not really worried about. Although I put Miller with Matthews because I just think that Matthews needs that puck retriever, that guy that go get the puck for him and find him when he's open. And Miller's been so good at that in the last few years. And you saw in that interview on Chicklets the other day, Brock Besser is like, the only reason I'm scoring at 5-on-5 is because of Miller. And it's because of his puck retrieval and his ability to find you in open space. So I thought that it just made so much sense to put him with like the best goal scorer in the league. And then Kyle Connor, who, is near that conversation.
Yeah. I was thinking something similar with JT Miller, like bringing a different element, but that was sort of why I put him in between the Tkachuks, because I thought that line had a very strict identity, like the line that's going to piss you off no matter what, whether it's retrieving pucks or smashing you into the corner or scoring goals, because all three of those guys can do that. So it's just interesting. Like these lines really don't mean anything, because once the puck drops, almost exactly a year from now, it could be a period in and the lines could be completely jumbled anyways. So it's fun to think about the combinations. But Case, I don't think you had Keller, right? On your team. I was interested by that. You had DeBrincat instead, and
he's an intriguing guy as well. DeBrincat, I did not think of him.
He's getting the Chris Kunitz treatment here.
Oh, okay.
And I think that you have to have Larkin on this team for his all-around game and scoring ability and leadership and everything. He's a guy that I think has to be on this team. And if he's on this team, put DeBrincat with him. They play so well together, and that scoring touch is there, and he's not too far off of a Clayton Keller type player. And the reason that Keller is on the bench for me is because we've already got it. We've got Keller's abilities on this team in many of the other guys. So I did give him the scratch there. It's not like a size thing, like obviously, because I have DeBrincat on this team and Jack and etc. But it just, I thought that we already checked off that box. And I like the chemistry of Larkin and DeBrincat.
Yeah. If I'm being honest, when I look up and down this forward group, I feel like a lot of players kind of check the same box. That's why I wanted to kind of keep it open for, players like Kreider and Trocheck and maybe even an Alex Tuch. Like I said, like there's probably like almost 20 forwards who could realistically have a legit chance to make this team, depending on fit. So I don't know. Like I had a really tough time between Kyle Connor and Jake Gensel because they are both dynamic offensive players. They both play the left side, but as soon as you start looking at the left side, it's on my roster anyway. Like, are those players better than Jack Hughes? No. Are those players better than Jason Robertson? No. And so it gets tricky. And speaking of tricky, this is a completely blurry
there you go
camera for you guys right now.
That looks good.
But yeah, so it gets tricky when these players are so similar, right?
And it's kind of one of the reasons, other than, the ones I've already mentioned, that I've got Boldy on this team, is I think he brings something different. And this guy his growth has been exponential. So I can only imagine where he's going to be in 2025. And here's a stat, because we can't go a podcast without saying one advanced analytic on here.
That's right.
Some people off. Boldy is, in terms of skaters who have played more than 200 minutes, he has the 25th least expected goals against per 60 out of all players. So that includes defensemen, forwards, everyone on the ice. He is one of the hardest guys to get chances and quality chances against. I know that might be partially because he plays on the Minnesota Wild and they have a lot of defensive minded players. So if he's playing with Eriksson Ek, I expect him to have less chances. But that team's also been in the basement all season. So there's another point to show, like, it's not Boldy. He's doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Other than that, I think all my players were Boldy and DeBrincat were my only two players that were not on your guys' team. So Keller could easily go in for Boldy, right?
Yeah. And I sort of felt the same about Pavelski. I think he brings something different, which is interesting. But again, this is one full calendar year from this very day. So it's one of those things, like Pavelski has aged like fine wine, but what does one more year do to a player, and which players get better too? So something to consider.
Well, and
Jake Sanderson, great shout, Hart, by the way.
Oh yeah, no, thanks, man. And it, like, again, going back to how this team is going to look, how it's going to be constructed. Who's the general manager? Bill Guerin. And so that guys like Faber and Matt Boldy are going to get legit looks to be a part of this team. I mean, I don't think that by any means Bill Guerin is biased. He's going to go with, the best squad. But what do we know about his Minnesota Wild? They're big. They're a heavy team.
Tough.
They're tough. They're hard to play against. And so, Chad, you mentioned some of the guys in there. Like, I mean, you've got the Kachucks on. We've got them on this roster, and I mean, those are two guys who are just so hard to play against. JT Miller as well. But I mean, yeah, I think there is a legit chance for the Kreiders of the world, Alex Tuch, Vincent Trocheck, and going back to Matt Boldy and guys of that nature as well, just by knowing how Bill Guerin thinks and the way that his Minnesota Wild teams have been constructed.
Yeah, and I think there's something to say about flexibility too. Like, you're going to want players who can play in multiple roles and who can also play multiple positions. So I took a lot of center / wingers over guys who primarily just play the wing, because they're more versatile, and like, you're going to be asked to move up and down the lineup no matter what, and you're going to be asked to play different roles than you might play on a day-to-day basis on your team. Like, I think about a guy like Tage Thompson, right?
Yeah.
Clearly he's the scorer on the Sabres. I mean, this year he's had a bit of a down year, but that's his role. He's the big, talented scorer. Well, if he makes this team and plays in the bottom six, they might want to use his huge frame to do other things. And I think that's a reasonable ask from a guy like that. He plays center and wing. That's why I picked a guy like Tage Thompson, just the versatility.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like recency bias, right? I mean, if this team was being made tomorrow, Tage Thompson probably wouldn't be on this roster. But who knows what kind of season he has next year. And we'll see if it's more like the one that he had last year. And you mentioned the big frame and the ability to play center or wing, to shoot the puck and all of that. So it's going to be interesting to see what Bill Guerin does with this U.S. team. But the amount of talent is off the charts.
Final thing I wanted to say about U.S. as we kind of transition to talking about Team Sweden is I wonder if we could see a situation for some of the more talented rosters. I'm talking about USA and Canada. If we see a situation where there are kind of just too many cooks in the kitchen, I feel like sometimes that can happen. And then maybe that gives, a bit of a leg up to a team like Sweden, who has more defined role players up and down its lineup, but still has that top end skill on the top two lines. So that's what I wanted to say before we started talking about Sweden, because I think that's relevant.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's like, I structured my Team Sweden a little differently for that reason.
And it felt easier, didn't it? I don't know about you, but for me, when I was looking at it, it felt easier to peg a guy as, a third line defensive player, as opposed to squeezing in an uber talented player like Larkin on the fourth line or something.
Yeah, exactly. Put Jack Eichel on the fourth line. So yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. We interrupt this podcast to tell you about one of our favorite partners, Sign Up Expert. If you're a sports bettor, whether a brand new one, casual, or hardcore, listen very carefully because this ad is for you. Guys, line shopping for the best odds matters, and that's why any profitable sports bettor needs to be using multiple sports books to maximize their winnings. Thankfully, there has never been a better time to get signed up, and we are here to connect you with the best promotions industry-wide. When you use our link at signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth, you can get access to all the top sportsbooks in your region, along with a review of each platform and their benefits. Most importantly, all of these sportsbooks have valuable sign-up offers for new users, and when you register through our link, again, signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth, you will automatically receive the top offer at each one, allowing you to start line shopping with an enhanced bankroll. Guys, once again, it's simple. When you use multiple sportsbooks, you ensure that you can always access the best available odds out there, which is key to being successful and taking home those winnings, baby. So, if you want to take advantage of these incredible benefits and support our brand all at the same time, it's a win-win. Please consider signing up for your next sportsbook through our link in the description down below. signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth. One more time, that's signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth. Hey guys, Harp here from the pod. We all want two things as sports fans when it comes to buying tickets: to not be ripped off by scalpers and to have an easy way to do it. That's where SeatGeek comes in. This pod is sponsored by the absolute best ticket app out there, SeatGeek. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, making it quick and easy to get the best deals on tickets to your favorite sporting events. It does this awesome thing where they score each ticket out of 10 based on its value, so you know whether you're getting a good deal or not. If the tickets are green, you'd better act quick and secure those things, but if the tickets are red, maybe wait a little bit before pulling the trigger and monitor the price in the SeatGeek app. SeatGeek just makes it way too easy. Anyways, here's the best part. SeatGeek has completely hooked us up. Boys in the Booth listeners get $20 off their first purchase on SeatGeek with the promo code BOYSINTHEBOOTH in all caps. Click the link in the description to download the app today. And remember to get your discounted tickets to your favorite sporting events using the code BOYSINTHEBOOth in all caps. Get great seats for a fraction of the cost with SeatGeek. Now back to your regularly scheduled podcast. All right, fellas, are we ready to get into the Swedes here? Okay,
yeah,
perfect. Okay, so Team Sweden, and yeah, I agree. Like, and I have to give credit to the Denver Post. I looked at a pretty good article from a few days ago, just kind of outlining some mock rosters, and they were pretty good. So, yeah. But Case, we'll go back to you. Just taking a look at who you've got on this Team Sweden roster for the Four Nations face-off next year.
Okay. In net, I have Ullmark, Gustafsson, and Markstrom. I suspect that we might have a 3-goalie sweep once again with Team Sweden here. Defense, I had Hedman with Karlsson, Erik Karlsson, Brodin with Dahlin, Ekholm, and Rasmus Anderson. And my extra, I again had 2 because I thought they were allowed more, is Forsling and Liljegren. On forward, I had maybe one of the most dynamic attacking lines I've ever seen on paper is Jesper Bratt, Elias Pettersson, and Willie Nylander. Then I had Forsberg, Zibanejad, and Kemp. And then I started thinking a little differently here and structured these last 2 lines as having like 2 strong defensive players and 1 strong scorer, and that was Landeskog, Eriksson Ek, and Raymond. That depends on Landeskog's health at this point. And then Backlund, Lindholm, and Leo Carlsson. My extra was Kalle Jarnkrok. Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there you go. And that's the type of player I kind of had in mind. I actually didn't pick Kalle Jarnkrok to make this team, but definitely a consideration. Here's my roster. Starting in net, then I'll go D, and then forwards, in case it is eerily similar to yours, which I think makes more sense because there's
structure here.
We talked about it. Like, there are players who played defined roles. It just makes a lot of sense. But starting in net, I've got Ullmark, Markstrom, and Gustafsson in that order. But an honorable mention to Samuel Ersson, who's had an incredible year this year, who could be a dark horse to make this team. Harp, you love Ersson. You and your brother both love Samuel Ersson.
Emerson does, especially because of fantasy.
Yes. You guys probably come home from work every night and just talk about Samuel Ersson all night. That's all you do. On the back end, I've got Hedman and Karlsson. Also Erik Karlsson on the top pair. Dahlin and Rasmus Anderson. And then I've got Hampus Lindholm, Jonas Brodin. And then as my extra, I have Adam Larsson. But honorable mentions to Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who's had a resurgence this year. Ekholm and Gustav Forsling, too. Both those guys are great players. So you're seeing, Case, a lot of similarities here. Going to the forward group, here's where the similarities are crazy, because the top 2 lines are exactly the same. And I was thinking the same thing when putting them together, like dynamic offensive scoring lines. Like, and it fits. All these players fit. So to repeat, Bratt, Pettersson, and Nylander, and then Forsberg, Zibanejad, and Kempe as the top 2 lines. The bottom 6 is slightly different with very similar personnel. My third line I structured as sort of a young, fun scoring line. I have Leo Carlsson and Lucas Raymond with William Karlsson in the middle. So obviously William is a bit older, but the 2 young guys on the wings. And then the fourth line I structured as a defensive shutdown line that I think you're feeling confident putting out against any other team's top line in this tournament. Backlund, Eriksson Ek, and Lindholm. And then my extra is Burakovsky. I did not include Landeskog because he hasn't played in like 2 seasons. I know he's been skating, but we just don't know when he's going to be back, if ever. So
I had to put him in there because if he is an active NHL player, he'll be on this team.
He will, 100%. If he's an active NHL player, the rules do state that you need to be signed to an NHL contract to play. I don't know if it requires you to have played games that season. But regardless, if you're going to be playing for this team, you're going to want to be playing games.
I did note that if Landeskog was not available, then William Karlsson was my guy in.
Yeah. So very similar. And a couple honorable mentions to Gus Nyquist, who is quietly one of the best Swedish scorers in the league and has been over the last like 5 seasons. And Rickard Rakell, another guy who can put the puck in the net.
Yeah, absolutely. Love those Swedish rosters and the look of them. That's for sure. And again, with mine, I mean, it's pretty similar, and there's some recency bias involved. So Ullmark and Markstrom, and then of course Samuel Ersson. I had to. He's been great for the Philadelphia Flyers this season. So definitely going with him on this roster. I think like Hedman and Carlson, it's you've got a good yin yang kind of duo there, as you guys have mentioned. The one is defensive stalwart, and then the other is just all offense. Rasmus Dahlin and Hampus Lindholm, I think, would be an excellent second pair, and then the third pair was tough, but I got to go with Matthias Ekholm and Rasmus Andersson, Jonas Brodin as the extra D on this team. Then in the top 6, Philip Forsberg with Pettersson and Nylander. I mean, obviously Pettersson and Nylander, really all three of those guys have the ability to drive the play. Then on the second line, talk about driving play, you've got Jesper Bratt with Mika Zibanejad. I think it'd be so much fun to see those two on a line together because of the Battle of the Hudson and the whole
spiritual.
Yeah, the whole Devils Rangers rivalry and all of that. Adrian Kempe as the winger on that line. And, talk about like perfect roles on this team. I mean, Joel Eriksson Ek as your third line center. I mean, he's having a great year in Minnesota and really looks like a first line center now. But Eriksson Ek centering that third line with Lucas Raymond and Elias Lindholm, who you could put on the wing, who has a right shot, of course. And then on that fourth line, you've got Leo Carlsson, again, a guy who I think is going to be so good next season. He's going to be better and still has some growing to do, by the way. That is a young, talented kid with a big frame who's just going to continue to get better and better. So Carlson with Michael Backlund and Lucas Raymond. And I like that Calle Jarnkrok pick as an extra. So I will go with him as well. I like that. Swiss Army knife. He can score. He can kill penalties, plays a good two-way game, and can play all three positions, really. So a Swiss Army knife, as you mentioned, their case.
Swedish Army knife. Yeah, I just felt that he was near a top 12 for me, and I figured, if one guy goes down or you need to swap someone out, he could just go anywhere and he could play any one of those lines and it would just work out because he is a chameleon on the ice. I think the one place that I might have stood out here, and I don't know, I could be wrong here, but I didn't even have Hampus Lindholm in my top 8 defensemen. And
true,
maybe it's because he's just so sheltered in Boston in my mind. Like he's just like not a guy I think about very often. He did cross my mind when I was making this list, but I just thought that I've really liked what I've seen from Forsling. More than ever right now, and Liljegren just brings this kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say it because he's a Leaf, but like grittier, presence in the corner, and he's kind of, it's a different look than the other Swedish defensemen here, whereas I think Lindholm kind of blends in with a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, at least you picked Liljegren to make the team and not Rasmus Sandin, because that's another former Leaf that, could potentially be in the running. Now, I don't know if he'll be close by then. I mean, he plays a ton of minutes, but as a Leaf fan, I think I have to push back a little bit, though, on the Liljegren pick. I don't think you can convince me that he's better than any of the guys in my top 7, including Lindholm, even though Lindholm...
Well, he was my 8th defenseman, so...
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought he was your 7th.
No.
Okay. I mean, that makes it a little better. But yeah, Forsling's a good pick. Ekholm's a good pick. Harp, I know you like him. Both those guys were included. I didn't pick a guy like OEL And I just included him as well in my honorable mentions because although he's had such a great season and has really found his groove again, he kind of brings the same thing as like an Erik Karlsson, and you don't need to.
So I looked this one up for fun. It just came to me. This player who I think he's kind of a Swedish army knife, quote unquote, as we're calling it here on the pod. But he's having a great year. He's a former Devil. Fabian Zetterlund could maybe have an outside chance at making this team. Case, you with me or what?
I thought about him. I did think about him because he's scoring goals on the worst team, the second worst team in the league.
15 goals
right now. He plays just a different style hockey. He does. You wouldn't think he was Swedish if you didn't see his last name or look at his face, I guess. But he just plays a different game than all of these guys. It's just hard nosed, grind, power forward type hockey. And I just don't really think of Sweden as that type of player. So I did think about him, and he's only getting better. But he didn't make it.
Well, how about another young Swede on the same team, William Eklund? Maybe he's so much better next season that he cracks it. Or Fabian Lysell from Boston. Like there are a lot of young players who could potentially crack this roster if they have good seasons next year, but it's just so hard to say, right? Because every player develops differently and at a different pace. So, like after the World Juniors, you'd think Lekkerimäki as well, but you just can't. He's not even played in the NHL yet. Yeah, it's a different. and you know what? Like this tournament, because we haven't had best on best, at all, like in the last however many years, it still feels like it's so far away, but it's only 1 year away. Like I said, it's true. February 15th to 20th is where I think it's slotted in 2025. That's 1 year from now. And, so I think that's why we have this tendency to think of these younger players because, what will this team look like in the future? Well, it is only 1 year away. So maybe it's just the best players now. Who make this team. When I was thinking about this team, there's these guys that I was certain that are on the team. Then there's this list of young players that could be there maybe. And then there's this blob of the exact same player that I came across. And I'm like, does any one of these? And I'll give you the blob here. It's tell me that any of these guys are generally different. And it's Marcus Johansson, Silverberg, Arvidsson, Jesper Fast, and there's one more, but I'm not stumbling across them here. I just looked at those guys. I'm like, I'd confuse those guys. I think of that group, I like Arvidsson the best. I considered him to play a fourth line role because I think he's a little more closer to the Calle Järnkrok type player where you can plug him into the lineup kind of wherever. He has that offensive upside, but is also, I don't have his underlying numbers in front of me, but I think he's better defensively than some of those other guys. But yeah, it's true. A lot of these players play similarly, but I think when you go up and down the forward group, and it feels like we consistently disagree on the forward group, maybe because there's more players to disagree about, but it seems like there is more balance on this team compared to the US where I feel like I had that problem more case where I'm looking at a group of players who all do the same thing. I feel like I had that problem more talking about the US than Sweden. Yeah. All those guys I said didn't even make the team. They're all right there. They're so I wouldn't be surprised if they took Marcus Johansson because of his experience. Mm-hmm.
By then he's played 900 and some games. Maybe they take him and he's played international. Why not? I was looking at all of them. And I'm like, there's this tier of the same player.
Mm-hmm.
And I did come across one more fun stat is I just don't think you could ever guess this is of all the active Swedes, who has the best plus minus in their entire career or forwards. Sorry.
Of all the active Swedes who are forwards, best plus minus.
Best plus minus of all of them. Huh.
I'm thinking guys who have played a lot of games on good teams. So I'm I know Nylander isn't it because his plus minus isn't always great. I was thinking Pettersson, but he's played on Vancouver, who pretty much sucked compared to this year.
Better plus minus than Nylander, though.
Yeah. Like Forsberg's played on Nashville, although Nashville was good for a long time, and he was there.
Answer in 5 seconds.
Kempe, I'll go Forsberg.
I'll go Backlund.
It's William Karlsson.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, I just never would have thought that because of his late start to his career and everything. But I guess when you're playing on Vegas for the good chunk of it,
true.
It's a plus
that is
111.
true. Do you have the list in front of you right now?
I do.
Or
yeah.
Can you give me the top 5?
Forwards or all?
Forwards.
Top 5 is William Karlsson, Nicholas Backstrom, Michael Backlund, Kalle Jarnkrok, and Joel Eriksson Ek.
Wow.
So Backlund.
Pettersson was 6 if you want to put him in there because Backstrom's not really playing hockey.
Backlund was a good guess then. All right.
Yep. Second one.
Perfect.
I mean, second one is Karlsson was 111 and Backlund was 75.
That's kind of shocking.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's an interesting stat.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean the stat that everyone deems unimportant.
Yeah, really.
But
yeah.
I mean, it's unimportant except at the extremes,
yeah,
I feel.
Yeah, when you've played 658 games, you're plus 111. It's like, okay, sure.
Yeah. It's like plus minus doesn't matter until you're, minus 100 every year for your career. And then it's like, well, maybe something's not going right.
Well, you want to shame the bottom 5? Is that what you're saying?
What, Swedes? Yeah, if you have it, let's hear it. Why not?
Marcus Johansson at minus 63. Lucas Raymond at minus 63. 211 games played, minus 63.
Oof.
Victor Olofsson, minus 59. Oscar Lindblom at minus 38. And William Eklund at minus 34. Tough start to the career.
A lot of those make sense.
That is tough.
Like
Olofsson, that makes a ton of
good-
sense. That guy's terrible.
Gonna be
5
good
on 5.
players.
Yeah.
Yeah, on bad teams.
Did we?
but-
One more guy I just thought of, and we may have mentioned him, so forgive me if we have. Ricard Raquel. Did we mention him at all?
He was an honorable
Okay.
mention from me.
My bad. Never mind.
But a guy who has played with some pretty damn good players and might fit better than someone else, right? Like fit really matters. So, and it matters who impresses at camp too. Like, I don't know how long these camps are going to be. It might just be a week or they might just be picked. Like, I have no idea how that's going to work, but maybe Raquel goes out there and impresses, right?
But there's I always think to Chris Kunitz and start thinking about all these players and go down this rabbit hole of Niels Hoglander's played pretty well on Vancouver lately. Does he get the nod because there's Pettersson on this
Another
team?
intriguing one. Absolutely.
But you get stuck down that list and that can go wrong pretty quick.
Yeah. It's a rabbit hole just like you described it because that was an anomaly with Chris Kunitz. Like, there's a reason we still talk about it today because
so strange.
That doesn't happen. But Sid was like, "Hey, this guy gets me the puck."
Yeah,
So,
in terms of extra D, he's a good defenseman back playing now. Does Oliver Shillington get a look as an extra defenseman for this team?
Maybe I thought about that.
Or here's another. Sorry, Chad. Here's another interesting one for you guys. Playing almost 30 minutes a night in the American Hockey League, if he can end up in a different NHL situation next year and look really good and continue to develop. What about a guy like Broberg for the back end? No,
zero chance.
Okay.
I think now we're talking
Chad
about
has written
Broberg.
him off.
We're talking about Broberg. I think the episode's over, guys. I think we've
Okay.
covered every player who could potentially make this team. Broberg will not. I'm sorry to Edmonton fans, but he will not.
He may get invited to camp.
What about Edvinson?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Elmer Soderblom.
Okay.
I mean,
I'm
If
in.
you're looking for
if they need a
size.
6'8"
Yeah.
player with magical hands. If you need Tage Thompson but Swedish, sure.
Oh, wow. So he's the Swedish Mario Lemieux? Is that what you're calling him?
Oh, there you go.
geez.
That's what Harper would call him. I will say, and I was listening to one of our preseason predictions the other day, to prepare for our mid-season episodes, and I was talking about how I was watching Elmer Soderblom in Traverse City in the prospect game, and man, he looked really good. And I'm surprised that he's not, something, because he looked like a man amongst boys. Like, he really did. But anyway.
Yeah.
That's my take. I like the player, but he's not going to make the team.
No.
I think we're done.
Yes, we're done. All right, boys. There we go. That's episode 200. Again, let's give ourselves a pat on the back. It's been a ride so far. Thank you to our great friends of the podcast that you heard at the beginning of the episode for the nice congratulatory messages, and thank you to all of you for the support so far. Looking forward to the next 200 episodes. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back with you next week to talk about the other two teams for next year's Four Nations Face-Off, Canada and Finland. Have a great week.
This has been another episode of Boys in the Booth with Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams. Connect with the Boys in the Booth on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Boys in the Booth. Visit boysinthebooth.com for show details. And don't forget, you can become a patron of the podcast for just $1 a month at patreon.com/boysinthebooth.